Welcome to this Teak Talk, in which I will share my fascination for all things teak and give a brief introduction to my novel Teak Lord, which takes place in and around Chiang Mai in the late 19th century. And in the next short while, I hope you will find out what a teak tree looks like, how teak wood is used in Thai art and architecture, when a teak boom came about in Lana, and why I wrote Teak Lord. And here on this first slide we can see the stars of the show. On the left we're looking at the biggest and oldest teak tree in Thailand. And on the right we're looking at the biggest teak trader in Thailand in the late 19th century. His name is Marian Cheek, and I'll tell you a little more about him later. So, allow me to introduce you to Tectona grandis, which is the scientific name for teak, and the English word teak comes indirectly from the Malay word teka. Once again, on the left we are looking at this biggest and oldest teak tree in Thailand, which is in the Big Teak Tree National Park in Uttaradit province in North Thailand. The tree is currently about 37 meters high. It used to be a lot higher, perhaps about 47 meters, but the top was knocked off by a lightning strike some years ago. And as for its age, this tree is thought to be about 1,500 years old, which must make it one of the oldest living things in Thailand. As you can see, there is a fence built around the tree to prevent people going up to it and disfiguring it in any way. On the right we can see a few more teak trees in this same national park. These obviously are younger, less mature trees, but hopefully they will live to the grand old age of the biggest and oldest tree on the left. So let's think about the appearance and characteristics of the teak tree. What does it look like? How can we identify it? Well, the easiest way is by looking for the very straight trunk, which all trees have, and the huge oval leaves, of which we can see examples here. The image on the left is taken in a young teak plantation just outside Chiang Mai, and here we're looking at some trees which are maybe 10, perhaps 20 years old, and as you can see they have grown upwards very, very quickly, but outwards very slowly, and this is another major feature of teak, that wood grows outward very slowly, and I'll explain why in just a moment. On the right we can see an example of teak leaves, this lovely green leaf with cream coloured veins, and in the top right hand corner we can see a couple of young brownish leaves just emerging. Teak is indigenous to North Thailand, as it is to Myanmar, India, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and also Indonesia. Although these days the tree is grown worldwide because of the great value of its wood. Other characteristics of the tree are that it produces clusters of small white flowers during the rainy season, but the tree is also deciduous, which means that it sheds its leaves during the dry season. However, it's not the physical appearance of the tree which is its most important feature, but the wood inside the tree. And as I mentioned, the tree grows outwards very slowly, as we can see by this image of a cross-section of a 100-year-old teak tree, with the years marked on the growth rings here. As you may notice, these growth rings are packed very tightly together, and this is what gives the wood its marvelous durability and strength. The wood also contains silica oil, which acts as a deterrent to termites and other insects which might otherwise destroy the wood very quickly. And this is why houses made of teak and teak carvings can last for hundreds and thousands of years because of its resistance, its resilience, and its durability. Of course, because teak is so valuable, it's also in great demand, and people try to cut teak trees and sell it wherever they find it. And this resulted in a disastrous accident in Thailand in the late 1980s when a stack of teak logs was washed down a hillside in south of Thailand, destroying a village, killing lots of people. And in the wake of that disaster, the government announced a ban on teak logging in 1989. Unfortunately, however, this ban has not been terribly effective, and in this image we can see hundreds of teak logs spread out across a field in North Thailand, and these logs cumulatively are probably worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And while looking at this slide, I'd like to share a short experience I had when I first started researching teak. I had heard that the Mae Yom National Park in North Thailand was home to the last stand of natural teak. And natural teak is much more resilient than plantation teak because it has a wider variety of genes. So it's very important to try to protect these natural teak which still remain. So I went to visit the Mae Yom National Park, and when I arrived there, I asked the park rangers if they had a problem with poachers stealing teak trees from the park. And they said, well, yes, we do, because we are only a few rangers. The park is very big. We cannot police the entire area all of the time. And sometimes we find that teak trees have been cut down and removed. Anyway, the next day, when I was leaving the park by a small exit, I came around a bend, and what should I see but these same park rangers cutting down a teak tree. I hopped out of my car with my camera, wanting to record what I was seeing, but perhaps understandably, these park rangers were not well pleased, which they let me know, and I hopped back in my car without taking a photo and sped off out of the park. But it made me realize that the problem of teak logging is not only with poachers coming into the park, but also on occasions some government employees on very meager salaries might try to supplement their income by cutting and selling teak. So, what can be done to prevent teak logging? Here is one example: by ordaining trees. If you travel around Thailand, especially the north, you may occasionally see trees with these saffron robes wrapped around them, as this monk is doing here. And this monk is actually ordaining the tree, making it a holy tree. And the belief is that a good Buddhist, which includes 95% of Thailand's population, would never cut down a teak tree because it would bring bad karma for them in the future. So we've looked at some of the properties and characteristics of teak, and if you happen to be in Chiang Mai and you're eager to see some teak trees, Here's one spot that you could go to. This is Sripum Corner, or Jeng Sripum as it's known in Thai, and this is the bastion in the northeast corner, and as we can also see, the old city is surrounded by a moat. And behind the bastion are teak trees in flower. So this is a good spot to go and take a look at teak trees when you're right in the middle of Chiang Mai. And while we're thinking about Sripum Corner, I'd like to diverge just for a moment to mention an incident near the beginning of my novel Teak Lord. The main character, Marian Cheek, when he arrives in Chiang Mai, sets out to explore the old city, and he bumps into another foreigner who eventually becomes a good friend. His name is Harry Stevens. And Marian Cheek and Harry Stevens take a walk around by the moat, and they come past Sripum Corner, and they chance upon a trance dance. As we can see in this image, trance dancing still goes on these days in North Thailand, although much more rarely than in the past, and it's rather difficult to see. But a trance dance involves spirit mediums dressing up in bright gay robes and dancing the day away to the sounds of a raucous orchestra, and they fuel themselves with copious quantities of alcohol and puff on giant cheroots and dance themselves, as the name suggests, into a trance to pay homage to their tutelary spirits. And this is one of the more exotic aspects of Northern Thai culture, which can still be seen today. All right. Now we've looked at the properties and characteristics of the teak tree, let's move on to think about teak wood in art and architecture in Thailand. Teak carving, of course, has a long tradition in Thailand, and it is frequently used to adorn temple doors and windows, as in the example on the right here. On the left is a young monk in a temple in prayer, and he is sitting proudly with his chisels and other carver's tools and showing off a Buddha image which he has carved himself. This young monk was taking part in a project organized by the United Nations to revive teak carving because the skills seemed to be disappearing. The young people did not seem interested in taking up this profession, and so the project hired several elderly teak carvers to teach the skills to younger people, and here is one of the products of it. Of course, teak carving is not restricted to religious buildings. We can see here other images from different parts of Thailand. In fact, both of these are in Chiang Rai, near the northernmost border of Thailand. On the left, we're looking at a carving called Creation by Jaron Jaijajit, and this is in the Hort Gale Museum in the Mae Fah Luang Park, just outside Chiang Rai. On the right is a teak carving by the celebrated Thai artist Tawan Dachani, who built the Black House, which is also just outside Chiang Rai and is also worth a visit. From these carvings we can see how detailed carvers can be, the intricacy with which they can create these works of art. And this is partly because although teak is very durable, it's classified as a medium hardwood and therefore is relatively easy to carve. Moving on from art, let's think about teak in Thai architecture, and here are a couple of examples right in the heart of Chiang Mai's old city. On the left is a detail of Wat Pan Tao, a small temple next to Wat Chedi Luang, which is a much better known temple in the centre of the old city. And here we can see a gorgeous carving of a peacock and other strange animals with inlaid mosaic glass and gorgeous entrance to the temple. On the right, this building is directly opposite Wat Pantau, and it used to be called the Kum Chau Burirat, which translates approximately as the Teak tax collector's residence. And of course, this is where the official used to reside who collected fees from the teak traders. It was built in the late 19th century at about the same time as the events in Teak Lord, and it shows some of the characteristics of a style which is frequently referred to as Lana colonial architecture. As the name suggests, this style is a combination of Asian and Western architectural styles. The ground floor here is made of bricks and stucco, with a breezy colonnade running along the front, while the upper floor is made entirely of teak and is surrounded by another breezy balcony with beautifully carved balustrades. This building is now known as the Lana Architecture Centre. It belongs to Chiang Mai University, and it's open to the public and has displays of art and architecture. So you can find out more about teak in Thai architecture if you visit the Lana Architecture Centre. During the late 19th century, when the teakwallahs were making pots of money, they used to invest it in lavish mansions, and at that time, gingerbread trim was a very popular feature added to buildings. And here we can see a couple of examples. On the left is the Muang Wei Zin House in Lampang, which is on Tanon Tala Gao, the walking street, which is closed to traffic on a Saturday evening. We can see examples of gingerbread trim on the upstairs balcony and also on the perforated fan-shaped panels above the doors. And these panels are an intriguing example of how architecture in Thailand deals with the climate. Of course, Thailand is a very hot and humid country, and these panels allow the circulation of air, keeping the interior of the building cool, even in the hot season. On the right is a building called the Vongburi House, which is located in Prae, a small town in North Thailand. And incidentally, Prae is probably one of the best places to go and see examples of teak Thai architecture. This building, as we can see, is smothered with gingerbread trim on the gables, the eaves, on the shutters, and if you happen to go there, this building is open to the public, I suggest that you take a look inside also, because the furnishings and fittings of this house are also from the Victorian era. And to step inside this building is like being swept back 150 years in time to the teak boom era. So before we move on to think about the history of teak trading in Thailand, let's just look at a couple more examples of beautiful teak buildings in North Thailand. On the left is the Hor Gale building in the Mayapha Luang Park near Chiang Rai, where we saw a sculpture earlier in the museum, and this beautiful building has huge teak pillars on which it stands and a lovely multi-tiered roof with teak shingles. The building on the right is part of the Black House, also near Chiang Rai. We looked at a sculpture earlier by the artist Tawan Dachani, and that sculpture is inside this main building of the Black House, which is also has a multi-tiered roof, and I can highly recommend a visit to the Black House for its most unusual architecture and sculptures by that famed artist. Now we've had a glimpse of Thai art and architecture using teak. Let's consider how the teak boom began in Lana. And these two gentlemen that we're looking at here were largely responsible for opening up Siam, as it was known in those days, to foreign trade. On the right, King Mongkut was the king of Siam at the time, when Sir John Bowring on the left, who was the British governor in Hong Kong, visited Siam in 1855. And together they wrote the Bowring Treaty, which became very important because it did away with prohibitive taxes on many Thai products, such as teak. So after the Bowring Treaty was signed, many foreign companies were eager to begin operations in the country, and the scene was set for a boom in the trade of teak. Incidentally, Sir John Bowring, although he only spent a few weeks in Siam, when he returned to the UK after his visit, he wrote a book called The Kingdom and People of Siam, which was probably the first guidebook about the country written in English, and it still makes fascinating reading these days. However, although the treaty was signed in 1855, it wasn't until 1882 that the teak boom really took off. And the reason for that was that a shipment of teak from Siam was sold in Liverpool for twice the expected price. And that sparked a rush for companies such as the Borneo Company and the Bombay Burma Trading Company, who already had offices in Asia, to come to Siam and especially to Chiang Mai and set up offices and begin trading in teak. This historical photo, kindly provided by Oliver Backhouse, shows, 5 elephants using all of their strength to move one gigantic teak log, which must weigh I don't know how many tons. And this gives us an idea of the heavy teamwork that was involved in removing teak from the forests and taking it to the rivers to be shipped down to the sawmills. Here, another historic image provided by the family of Frank Frere shows a teak raft on the Ping River, and as we can see, teak is covering the entire surface of the river here. The teak logs, which have been cut into measured lengths, are roped together with rattan and then sent down the river to the sawmills in Bangkok. As we can see, there is a small thatched hut on the raft here, which is to provide a bit of shelter from the fierce sunlight and perhaps rain which the men who travel with the teak raft might face. This was a very precarious job because these men had to try and make sure that the teak rafts did not break up as they went round the bends in the river. And in fact, near the beginning of the novel Teak Lord, there is an exciting scene where Marion Cheek, coming upriver, was almost crushed by a teak raft. Looking at historic images, here are a few sketches by the Swiss illustrator Eugene Bernand. These sketches were made in the 1880s, which coincides exactly with the period of the novel Teak Lord, and I think they give a wonderful example of the excitement and adventure that was to be had in the jungles of North Siam and Laos. These images were used to illustrate a book written by Dr. Nace, a French explorer, in his book Travels in Upper Laos and Siam, which was written in the 1880s. And on his travels, Dr. Nace met with the main character of Teak Lord, Marion Cheek, when he was in Chiang Mai. Here on the left is another image by Eugene Burnand from that same book, Travels in Upper Laos and Siam. And this image shows some gigantic teak trees in the Mae Lao forest, which is near Chiang Rai in Thailand now. And in the distance we can see a couple of elephants walking through the teak forest. I was so captivated by this minimalist image that when I finished my novel and thought about a cover, I asked the illustrator to use Burnand's image as the basis for a picture of a teak lord. And on the right we can see something similar, a forest of huge teak trees, an elephant walking through the forest with a mahout sitting, or elephant handler, sitting on the neck of the elephant, and the teak lord himself sitting in the howdah, or elephant seat. So let me try to explain briefly why I wrote the novel Teak Lord. As I mentioned earlier, when I started researching teak in North Thailand, I was planning basically to write a non-fiction book about the history of teak in the region. Yet when I came across more and more writings by foreigners who visited the region or who lived here at the time, I decided that it would make a much more interesting read if I could imagine some of the dialogue that took place between these characters and some of the exciting events which happened during those last years of the 19th century. And so I decided to use the events which I could read about in all of the source materials and string them together using my imagination to bring alive the characters in the novel. During the late 19th century, Chiang Mai was still a small city, and here we see a map made by James McCarthy, who was employed by the Siamese government to help map Siam and its surrounding territories. Although Chiang Mai has changed very much since those days and now has a population perhaps 100-fold of what it was then, the basics are still there. We can see the square of the old city, and to the east of it, the Ping River snaking down from north to south. Beside the river are just a few buildings noted here from the north to the south. They are the chief's house, Dr. Cheek's sawmill opposite. That's the sawmill of the main character, Dr. Cheek, in the book. A single bridge crossing the river, the Siamese Telegraph Office, the Bombay-Burma Trading Company Office, and the British Consulate, which stood on the west bank of the river and now is in the compound of the Anantara Resort. So, on to the novel Teak Lord. I've already mentioned the main character, Marion Cheek, who arrived in Chiang Mai in 1875 in the company of his employer, Dr. Daniel McGilvery, and Dr. Cheek arrived to work as a medical missionary in Chiang Mai. But he didn't have much success with his pills and potions, which were mistrusted by the local population, and so after a few years he abandoned his post as a missionary to focus entirely on teak trading. And this was made possible because he became very close friends with the local ruler, Chow Intanon, and Chow Intanon granted him concessions to cut teak in the forests around Chiang Mai, which led to Marion Cheek becoming very rich. He also became the agent for the Borneo Company, which allowed him to accrue even greater wealth. The gentleman on the right here, Louis Leon Owens, was the son of Anna Leon Owens, who in the mid-19th century was the governess at the royal court in Bangkok, and she taught the concubines and children of King Mongkut. And actually at that time Louis also lived in Bangkok as a young boy, and he was a friend of Prince Chulalongkorn, who later became the King of Siam. After travelling the world, Louis came back to Siam, renewed his friendship with King Chulalongkorn, who gave him a job in the army. Then after a couple of years working in the Siamese army and fending off attacks by Hor raiders on the borders of Laos, Louis Leon Owens changed tack because he heard of vast profits to be made in the teak business, so he also became a teak trader and joined the Borneo Company too. As a result of this, Cheek and Leon Owens became very good friends, and they enjoyed evenings drinking and gambling with Chow Intanon, exploring the forests around Chiang Mai, and sharing the pleasures of a harem of beautiful local girls in Chiang Mai. However, when it came to the profits from teak, they weren't quite as friendly, and their relationship was rather strained at times, but I will leave you to read Teak Lord to find out about all the twists and turns in the relationship between these two enigmatic characters. Because Teak Lord is a novel, I don't want to give away too much of the suspense, or you won't enjoy reading the book, but I'm going to jump now to a couple of scenes near the end of the book, and one of the chapters there is called Victoria in Lana, and that chapter describes a great party at the British consulate to celebrate the Diamond Jubilee of Queen Victoria. And for that occasion, a statue of Queen Victoria was shipped from England to Chiang Mai, but because transport was not quite so reliable in those days, they had a few problems getting the statue there, and it eventually took a kind of roundabout route to arrive, which I won't explain here, but you can find out how the statue of Queen Victoria arrived in the novel Teak Lord. This statue initially was located at the British consulate, and these days it's still in Chiang Mai and stands at the Foreign Cemetery, a cemetery dedicated to foreigners living in Chiang Mai, and it's adjacent to the Gymkhana Club. And the image on the right is a picture from the clubhouse of the Gymkhana Club, which still exists. It was established as Chiang Mai's colonial club in the late 19th century and was frequented by teakwallahs who used to sit around on their days off sipping gin and tonics and looking out over the cricket pitch and golf course and enjoying the pleasures of North Thailand. As you can see, little has changed, and this enormous rain tree, which is situated right next to the clubhouse, features in a couple of dramatic scenes towards the end of the novel Teak Lord. And that brings to an end my short Teak Talk for today, and I hope that you have learned something about the characteristics of teak, how teakwood is used in Thai art and architecture, how a teak boom came around in Thailand, and why I wrote Teak Lord, and why you should read it. Finally, I would like to leave you with just the details of the various ways that you can buy Teak Lord in ebook, paperback or hardback. And if you have any comments on this presentation or any questions, please contact me at the address at the bottom of this slide.